It is the most common pelvic tumor in women. Probably 80% of African-American women have these benign tumors.
Wow.
Now, they're not all symptomatic,
Yeah.
but they have them.
Yeah.
And it's the most common reason why women have heavy periods. It's also the most common reason why women undergo hysterectomy. There are so many people that either don't have insurance that really should qualify for Medicaid, or they make too much money for where Medicaid is set at, and they're the working poor, that they're caught in this, they can't afford regular insurance, and they don't qualify for Medicaid. Healthcare is a mess right now, and we need to fix it, and we need to provide better for our communities.
Hey, family, welcome to Let's Be Clear. I need you to do me a favor. This is an all-points bulletin for your mother, for your daughter, for your sister, for your girlfriend, for your aunt, for your coworker. Bottom line, for any woman who you care about, the doctor is in the house. I am so grateful to have an ally who can help us to read the chart and understand what's taking place, particularly in the health of Black women and why it is a crisis. Dr. John, I'm glad to have you.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
No, we've been running into each other for now almost 2 years, trying to make this conversation happen.
Yes.
And I am glad that our schedules and the universe was able to line up for it to be able to take place. I've got to jump in. There is a pandemic in the Black community about health. And Black people were gravely impacted by COVID because of pre-existing conditions.
Yes.
A lot of Black men never go to the doctor till they go to the emergency room. And a lot of sisters don't go to the doctor until they feel pain. But early prevention leads to cure. And there's so many of our mothers and our sisters who are, quite frankly, suffering when they don't necessarily have to do so.
Absolutely.
And I wanted you to talk about, as best you can, from your purview, why do you think there is such a inequity of health and health care for Black women?
It's such a big topic to unpack, but obviously, we've not done a very good job of caring for women of color. We have when I say we, not me, but medicine.
Yeah.
I care for women suffering with uterine fibroids, which are benign tumors. And there's over 1 million women in the United States suffering with fibroids, most of whom are women of color. And many of them sit on the sidelines suffering with these horrible periods, pelvic pain, just horrific symptoms because they don't want major surgery, and that's the only option they've been given.
Yeah.
And because of the very poor history we have in caring for these women, particularly in the South. We're in the South, and, we don't have to go into the Fannie Lou Hamer, Mississippi appendectomies,
Right.
But it would be remiss not to acknowledge the history because that plays a role in women not coming forward. There was a study in the Journal of Women's Health at the Mayo Clinic, 2014, that looked at around 1,000 women, and they were all suffering with fibroids. The average time to getting treatment was over 3.5 years, and a quarter of them waited over 5 years to get treated. And they asked, well, why didn't you come forward? You were suffering. Well, they didn't want hysterectomy, and that was the only option they were given.
Yeah.
And there was a certain mistrust that, all you're giving me is an amputation. I thought these were benign tumors. Why do I need an amputation? And so, it's a carryover from experimentation and unnecessary hysterectomies being done, even to this day. It's just another inequity we really need to face head on and change, because we do a procedure called UFE, Uterine Fibroid Embolization. It's a 30-minute outpatient procedure where women go home not only with all their parts and even have kids after,
Wow.
they just leave with a bandaid.
Yeah.
That's it, a bandaid. No surgery, no losing organs. It's one of the biggest medical breakthroughs for women, particularly African-American women who disproportionately suffer with fibroids, and yet they're not being told about it.
Yeah. I read a book many years ago called Medical Apartheid that talks about why it is that African Americans have a systemic fear or even paranoia about the medical industry, whether it is Tuskegee or whether it is Fannie Lou Hamer. And I'm trying to figure out, because you have been such an advocate for women of color, how have you been able to hurdle over it when there has been such a pronounced mistrust?
I think once patients see, obviously, I am one of the only, if not the only, unmelanated member of the Atlanta Medical Association.
Yes.
And I've been practicing here 40 years. And I think once people see that you care about them, that's when the trust develops. So even though I don't look like you, my patients, the vast majority of my patients are women of color.
Yeah.
I may not look like you, but I care about you.
Yeah.
And once they know you care, that's where the trust comes in. And, I grew up in the neighborhood of Frederick Douglass. I mean, I had the honor of living in his neighborhood about 100 years or so after he was there.
Yeah.
And there were Frederick Douglass statues all around me. We learned about Frederick Douglass in school. His 4th of July speech for a slave was in, and the North Star was in Rochester.
Yeah.
So I grew up in that environment and a respect for an amazing human being. Plus, you add that 10 years of Jesuit education, serving others, being a man for others. That's kind of my genesis, where I'm from.
There is such a attack, I believe on Black life, is that in recent vintage, when you talk about civil rights or the inequity, we think about aggressive policing. We talk about DEI or the absence of it. But very rarely do we talk about how it is a medical issue. And I want you to talk about and roll out for our listeners the impact of the butchering of Medicare and Medicaid. What does that really mean?
Well, I mean, again, a lot to unpack, but this is the 70th anniversary of Birmingham and Rosa Parks. This is the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. It's also the 60th anniversary of the creation of Medicaid. And while you can talk about the civil rights movement and its connection to educational desegregation, there's also a healthcare component of that as well, and the inequities of that, and the creation of Medicaid. And unfortunately, Georgia is one of 10 states that is not accepting the extra Medicaid expansion, and it's really something that should be done. There's no reason that we shouldn't participate as a state in Medicaid expansion. So that needs to be changed.
Yeah. I am overwhelmingly concerned because a lot of people in the last presidential cycle really believed that the economy was going to get better and the eggs was going to get cheaper. But now prescription medications is going through the roof. Our own Senator Warnock was fighting doggedly to reduce that price of insulin. And now we're seeing it going in the reverse tide. How does this community provide safe gaps for our seniors and for those who are disadvantaged, who, quite frankly, got to pick between bread and their prescription?
It's such a difficult thing, as you say. There are so many people that really need health care. They deserve to have health care, and we see it every day in the office. We'd like to be serving more people, but there are so many people that either don't have insurance that really should qualify for Medicaid, or they make too much money for where Medicaid is set at, and they're the working poor, that their caught in this, they can't afford regular insurance and they don't qualify for Medicaid, which is really terrible. And so they're kind of caught in between. But we need to do a better job. Healthcare is a mess right now, and we need to fix it. And we need to provide better for our communities that really, I mean, I spoke at a business conference recently, and there was a lot of talk about the economics and business and so forth. And I was one that spoke on, there is no wealth without health.
That's true.
We've got to focus on ourselves, and we've got to do a better job of caring for ourselves. I mean, I tell patients all the time, you know, if you feel that you're being ignored or dismissed, because a lot of our patients, they have horribly heavy periods and their symptoms are just ignored. It's like, well, you're getting older. It's a part of being a woman. They get told all sorts of things.
Right.
They're not being listened to. And I keep telling, you know, our patients, nobody knows your body better than you. You're the CEO of your body. And if something's not right and you feel your doctor is ignoring you or dismissing you or not listening to you, find another doctor.
Yeah.
There are plenty of great doctors in this community that will listen to you and spend the time with you. It's so important.
No, that's great. My trainer used to say that exercise is really just 20% of your health, that 80% is your diet.
Absolutely.
We have been waging war against a Dollar General that's supposed to really stand in the gap for food deserts. But 90% of the food that's in Dollar General is processed food.
Right.
There's no fresh vegetation or fruit that is available. It is stuff that is laced with a whole lot of additives and preservatives. And Black people, quite frankly, I hate to say it, but have to, can't afford to eat healthy.
Right. I mean, we don't know where fibroids come from, and that's another problem. There hasn't been the appropriate research, and I'll put that aside for a moment. I'd like to come back to that. But people ask me all the time, why do African-American women disproportionately suffer with fibroids? Mm-hmm. And it does run stronger genetically in African-American families, but we can't pick our parents. We can't do anything about that.
Right.
But there are things we have control over.
Yeah.
We don't know where fibroids come from, but once they arrive on the scene, they grow with estrogen. And estrogen, unfortunately, is pervasive in the food, in the water. There's lots of hormones. But if you can avoid some of the hormone-rich foods, red meat, non-organic chicken, dairy, and instead increase your diet of colored fruits and vegetables, which have compounds in them called flavonoids, which...
Hold on. Say those three things again.
The hormone-rich foods are red meat, non-organic chicken, dairy. Those have... And you can do workarounds.
You saying don't eat those things.
Well, try to limit consumption. I couldn't avoid all red meat forever. That would be, I'm kind of a carnivore, but if you can kind of moderate and lean choices and instead of dairy, maybe you use like one of the nut milks or there's workarounds these and say, I love chicken, but there are chickens that have, being plumped up with hormones. So,
right.
Organic chicken that are supposed to be, without hormones. If you can do that and eat more colored fruits and vegetables, which have these compounds called flavonoids, which block estrogen, an important enzyme in estrogen production. The other is try to be as close to your ideal body weight because estrogen is stored and produced in body fat. And in general, racially, African-American women have more body fat than other racial groups. Asian women have the lowest body fat and the lowest incidence of fibroids. Now, I see a lot of very healthy fit.
Is that genetic or diet?
Well, both, I think. I mean, but you can't control the genetics. You might as well try to work on what you can work on.
Right.
And I see a lot of fit African-American women in my practice that have very low body fats that still have big fibroids. They're doing what they need to do, but, genetically, they have this issue. But if you can try to lose excess body fat, no one says you have to be skinny, but if you lose excess body fat, you will improve your fibroid symptoms. And then the last piece is vitamin D. Vitamin D is the most powerful growth inhibitor of fibroids that we know of. And only 10% of African American men or women have adequate vitamin D. And if you have a normal vitamin D, you're much less likely to suffer with fibroids. But again, only 10% do. So get your vitamin D checked, supplement if you need to. That's a really important piece.
And fibroids is expressly just in women.
Expressly in women. It is the most common pelvic tumor in women. Probably 80% of African American women have these benign tumors.
Wow.
Now, they're not all symptomatic,
Yeah.
but they have them.
Yeah.
And it's the most common reason why women have heavy periods. It's also the most common reason why women undergo hysterectomy. As I mentioned, hysterectomy, the average age is under 40, and I've met way too many women under 30 that have had a hysterectomy from fibroids, and it is completely and totally unnecessary. UFE should be the first line option rather than hysterectomy because you get to keep all your parts, even have children after.
What is the age range that is the heaviest impacted?
30s and 40s is the peak
Yeah.
for fibroids. Some women, African American women get them earlier in life. We've seen some teenagers that have already been impacted by fibroids. That's unusual, but African American women get them earlier. They get them bigger, more numerous, and they're more likely to undergo hysterectomy. In fact, if you look, Meharry did a study. They looked racially at who gets hysterectomy.
Yeah.
Caucasian women get hysterectomy for cancer of the uterus, which is absolutely appropriate, period, end. African American women get hysterectomy for benign fibroids. So you could say, why are we, again, doing amputation for benign disease in Black women?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be. UFE replaces all of that.
I am overwhelmingly concerned and I want to hear what your thought is as a healthcare professional on what is your sense of the direction that health in America is going in under Secretary Kennedy.
Well, I don't know the man personally. I'm the least political person you probably will meet.
Yeah.
And I have hope that whoever is in the chair will really put people first and health first. I don't know at this point. But what we do need to do, particularly with fibroids, is we need to have more research.
Yeah.
There is very little research in fibroids, which is really inappropriate and staggering to me. Fibroids are near the bottom. They looked at 300 medical conditions. Fibroid research money is in the bottom part of that. If you look at quartiles, fibroids are near the bottom. $18 million a year is spent on fibroid research, which sounds like a lot of money. It is not. And it's a condition that affects so many women, over 30 million women. There's a $32 billion a year impact to society. And you spend about 69 cents per person affected. 69 cents, because if you take 18 million into like 30 million, you take a condition that affects Caucasians primarily, cystic fibrosis. It affects about 30,000 women, not 30 million women.
Right.
And it is a devastating disease, but it only affects 30,000 people, primarily Caucasians. They get $94 million a year in research, which is over $3,000 per person affected. So you take a condition that really doesn't have anywhere near the impact, getting $3,000 a person affected, versus a condition that affects way more people, getting 69 cents per person. So again, another inequity that really we need the research. We don't know where fibroids come from. We really need to be able to tackle that. We need that research. The other issue is there is a bill that it's Stephanie Tubbs Jones Fibroid Research and Education Act. And Stephanie Tubbs Jones was in the House and she passed away, but her bill is sitting there dormant. And it does two important things. It directs the NIH, it gives them additional funding for fibroid research. another 30 million. It also directs the CDC to increase awareness about procedures like UFE to doctors and the lay community, because most women never hear about UFE, and there really needs to be this education to doctors and the lay community about this great procedure. But this bill is sitting there, and there are only D's on the signature.
Wow.
My Congressman Scott's signature is on there, and it's being held up in the Senate. Cory Booker's kind of leading the charge in the Senate side, and Yvette Clarke from New York is on the House side. But all the signatures to date have D after their name, no R's. How is this?
Wow.
How is this a partisan issue?
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been trying to reach out to Senator Scott from South Carolina as an African-American man. Maybe you can identify, hopefully, I mean, men have women in their lives.
Right.
How can you possibly not put your name to this? It is so necessary, and would be just a small step. I mean, additional 30 million in research, which would be very helpful, and to get this information out about UFE, and you can't put your name to it because there's just all D's on there. I just don't understand.
I'm concerned. You said twice that we don't know where the fibroids come from. Research is necessary. And in the backdrop, research funding is being hijacked and tackled. You've got $700 million worth of research money being taken away from Harvard, $500 million from Columbia, $300 million, my home state, from Johns Hopkins, $63 million from Howard University. And yet, 2 press conferences happened just recently. One is South Korea said last week that the best and the brightest scientists and researchers are welcome to come there. And they're going to earmark somewhere in the orbit of $500 million for researchers to move to South Korea. Then the UK said those who are in the sciences globally and are being roadblocked from Harvard and from these other schools come because we want to make an investment into the best and the brightest minds. If we're losing our scientists, losing our researchers, and losing our students into the field, where does that place us?
I mean, look at STEM education. That is so important. It is so important. The research is vital. It's certainly concerning, very concerning.
Yeah. My daughter is pre-med at Spelman, and
Nice.
she said something to me just 2 weeks ago that has me dizzy. She said, Dr. John, that a lot of the students at Morehouse are now having to take their classes at Spelman because the overwhelming majority of the men who were pre-med are switching to business.
Right. I for many years, I interviewed prospective medical students at Morehouse. I love Morehouse School of Medicine.
Yeah.
I love Dr. Rice. I'm a huge Dr. Rice fan. She has done an absolutely incredible job there. I'm her biggest fan. And in looking at prospective medical students, they have no problem finding very bright African-American women for their medical class.
Yeah.
But they very much struggle with finding African-American men for the class. And they struggle primarily in STEM. And the last thing that they want to do, because it's an investment for any medical school to recruit potential doctors, they pour a lot into them. And the last thing you want is to pour a lot into somebody who isn't going to make it. And they know they have charts and graphs, and they really understand based on history who's going to make it or not, based on their science and math scores and so forth. And they struggle there with finding African-American men that will commit to medical school and the rigor. I mean, it's a calling like the church. It's not for making millions. It is a calling.
Yes.
And you've got to be prepared for the rigor.
I read a interesting article that was arresting for me on the disproportionate amount of Black people who are able to get pain medication because Caucasian doctors are slower to write them for them because there's the myth that Black people have a greater tolerance for pain. And they're suffering and not able to get it.
Again, it goes back to, just total misconceptions about people. You have to kind of understand them and be empathetic and have the care. And if you don't really care, or if you have preconceived notions or prejudice, that is a recipe for disaster in healthcare, and the patient-doctor interaction just falls apart.
Yeah.
And so one thing that has never failed me in the 40 years I've practiced here in Atlanta is every patient is my wife, my mom, my sister, my daughter.
Wow.
Everyone.
Yeah.
That never fails.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at a patient and they're my mom, my sister, my daughter, my wife, it never fails.
No, that's powerful. I want you to talk about when President Trump ran the first time or was in office the first time. He said he wanted to round up all of the drug dealers and put them in jail. And Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club said, how many people in pharmaceutical sales will end up going to jail? And what we don't ever address when we think about drug addiction, we're thinking about cocaine and barbiturates and that kind of thing, but we don't talk about the addiction to prescription medication.
Right.
And how many people are finding their way lost in that.
Well, again, I'm very apolitical, and a lot of this stuff, you can't talk about something so serious and so deep as addiction with like tweets and catchphrases and those sorts of things. It makes you look ridiculous.
Yes.
I mean, really. So, I just tune out any of that stuff completely.
I want you to where the people watching us today from Wichita, Kansas, Fort Worth, Texas, from Wyoming, from Seattle, Washington, and they're concerned, how do they get more information about fibroids? Their doctor is recommending to them a hysterectomy.
Right.
What should their next progressive steps be?
If you've been told that you need a hysterectomy for benign fibroids, you've got to get a second opinion from an interventional radiologist like myself. An interventional radiologist is a specialty within radiology that does minimally invasive procedures that replace the need for surgery. In this case, I do a procedure called UFE, Uterine Fibroid Embolization, which replaces the need for surgery, whether it's myomectomy, cutting out some of the fibroids surgically, or hysterectomy, removing the uterus surgically. You don't need surgery for fibroids, particularly hysterectomy. It's completely unnecessary. And we could replace it with UFE, but you've got to see an interventional radiologist. And that's really the key, because most gynecologists, and they're the gatekeepers of women's health, so women naturally will see the gynecologist when they're having heavy periods, pelvic pain, whatever symptom that is often due to fibroids. Then the next thing is often going on to surgery. They may try a medical regimen, a birth control, some hormonal therapy. But as I said earlier, what grows fibroids? Estrogen. What's in birth control? Estrogen. So while it might lighten a woman's period temporarily, it grows these fibroids. And then they say, well, we've tried the medical therapy and it's not working. Now you need surgery.
Yeah.
And you don't need surgery. You need that second opinion to learn about UFE. And there are physicians like myself all over the country that can do the UFE procedure, but this is my life's work. This is what I do. I don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of made it my life's work to try to educate women. And I speak all over the country on this. In fact, Imagine a white male physician going to Tuskegee, talking to several hundred young Black women.
Right.
And I was telling them, you're undergoing the Tuskegee experiment of your lifetime and you don't even realize it.
Wow.
It got real.
Wow.
Because instead of the poor Alabama sharecroppers with syphilis that weren't told about penicillin, here's young Black women of all different socioeconomic strata not being told about this amazing UFE procedure.
Powerful.
Very powerful. It was real.
No.
In fact, when they invited me, I almost wasn't sure, am I the right person for this?
Yeah.
And they said, you are the perfect person for this. It's not the messenger, it's the message.
Yeah. No, and I'm thankful that you have answered your life's call, and the benefits are overwhelming. Let me say to you, every person who has talked to me about Dr. John is Black. Every person. And I called Guinness Book of World Records today. You're the first white guest I've ever had on this show.
I'm honored.
No. I'm grateful. And what it is that you do is so needed and so necessary. 2 women in my family have lived through hysterectomies and had to make complete life adjustments because of it. And I'm sitting here saying, Lord, if I could have just got him to Dr. John before this moment,
it's my life's work. I want him, it's also the 40th anniversary of my medical school graduation at Georgetown. And I'm one of the ambassadors to reach out and try to get people to come to our reunion in November. And almost all of my classmates are retired. And they're like, you're still working? Why are you still working? And I'm like, I love what I do. I want to be able to do this for as long as possible. Because the fuel that keeps me coming to work every day is seeing women every day in my office saying, God bless you. You transformed my life.
Wow.
Everything I did revolved around this horrific period. I couldn't work certain days. I couldn't have relations. I couldn't, everything I did, I carried extra clothes. Everything I did or didn't do revolved around this. You gave me my life back. I am so grateful. I mean, how great is that? I want to keep doing this for as long as the good Lord will let me.
No, you said it right. It's your ministry assignment, and I'm praying that God will add breath to your body and strength to your mind so that you can continue to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so grateful to have a public humanitarian, somebody who is concerned about your health and your welfare and your well-being, and all the more that of the women in your life. Dr. John, thank you for hanging out with me.
Thank you so much.
Those of you who are subscribers, I need you to stay tuned. We're going to go a little bit deeper with the doctor. The good news is you can keep all your clothes on, but we're going to have an examination. I want you to stay right there. Thank you. Do me a favor. I want you to like, follow, share, subscribe, and spread the rumor. The doctor is in the house. I'll see you next time.